Welcome to another episode of Holistic Health Habits, the podcast where we explore the latest trends, innovations, and insights in holistic health with a focus on nutrition. I'm your host, Sarani Fernando. Today, we're delighted to welcome Ritamarie Loscalzo, the founder of the Institute of Nutritional Endocrinology. She's a leader in the field of functional health and nutrition, particularly in balancing hormones and optimizing health through nutrition. Ritamarie brings a wealth of knowledge with her to this episode, and I'm super excited to get into this discussion. Ritamarie, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to your audience.
Great. And did I say your name right? Ritamarie, is it Loscalzo?
Loscalzo, you said it perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. So, we've got a lot to get into. We're going to go a little bit deep into this episode. But first, can you just give us a bit of the lay of the land of your own background, education experience, and your journey as the founder of the Institute of Nutritional Endocrinology?
Absolutely. It all started with me and my health falling apart. I was the typical average American eating garbage food and not really taking care of myself, and my health fell apart very young. And I always say that I was very lucky that my health fell apart when I was in my 20s because I had less time to do damage. And when it did, and I started to look into medical approaches to the things that were going on with me, I wasn't finding anything besides take this drug. No, we don't know what's wrong with you. Just keep taking these drugs. And so I branched out and asked if it could be my diet, branched out and started to research. And this was back before the internet. This was back in the 1980s when you had to go to libraries and bookstores and actually physically pick up pieces of paper that were bound together and read them. And I discovered that I had, probably inadvertently, but I had been destroying my body with everything I was putting in my mouth and everything I was putting on my skin. And so I completely turned that around and was able to get my health back. And I said, this shouldn't be this hard to do. I want to learn how to do this. So I went back to school and I got my doctorate in chiropractic and my master's in nutrition and certified in acupuncture. And I started to just build up all these strategies that I could use with people. And I started practice and I started to work on this. And, 40 years later, here I am.
Wow. Okay. So you've been practicing for 40 years and then you founded, when did you, start the Institute?
Let's see. Officially, the Institute was started in 2013.
Okay.
So I had been working with clients, with patients in the office, had started to work online with people, and I had so much requests from practitioners of all kinds say, I want to learn what you know. How do you know what you know? I decided to start to create classes for practitioners. Okay. And it was so popular that people wanted more. And so I started the Institute to, house that and to create a plethora of educational pieces and certifications and things that practitioners of all kinds can learn, whether they're just starting out and they're nutritionists or coaches, or whether they're doctors that have been in practice for decades who are tired of the medical system, of not really looking at root causes, of really looking deep. And that's when we started.
Okay. So is most of your time now spent like educating, or do you also have your own practice and your own clients?
I have a mixture of both. So I work online, but all exclusively online. I don't have an office. And I teach practitioners. I have training, but I also have coaching programs where I help individuals who want to get well. And I mostly do it through a combination of hybrid programs that combine group plus education plus one-on-one. And I've got a number of coaches and practitioners, doctors and nurses and coaches that have graduated my program and are certified in nutritional endocrinology, and they work on a team. And we work as a team to help people to really get to the root causes of their issues.
Okay, great. And so many of our listeners will be holistic health practitioners wanting to learn more, but some may be a little bit more fresh in the space. Can you just break it down? What exactly is nutritional endocrinology? And then talk about your nutritional endocrinology method.
Yeah, absolutely. So nutritional endocrinology it's exactly what it sounds like. So it's basically using nutrition to balance the endocrine system. The endocrine system is the system of hormones. So many people don't know how to say endocrinology because it's a challenging word to get out.
Right.
understand it, but if you've been to, anybody about your thyroid or your diabetes or other things that are hormonally related or hot flashes or whatever, oftentimes you'll be talking to an endocrinologist. We're not endocrinologists. We're using the study of the hormones and how they work in the body with nutrition. And when I say nutrition, I don't mean just the food that you put in your mouth or the vitamins and minerals. I think it's when we nourish ourselves, anything that nourishes us. So it's everything we put in and on our body, the thoughts we think, the stress we experience, the environment. So it's everything that comes together to influence the hormones. We look at how can we help people to balance those hormones, get results, overcome a lot of their health challenges by using nutritional endocrinology.
Okay. And what about the differences in the approach that men need to take versus women? I feel like this is a conversation that we're having more now, but still, it's a little bit blurry. Like maybe 20 years ago, it was just the same recommendations for both men and women with diet and exercise and not really taking into account a women's unique, cycle, or even if they're pre or post-menopausal. How does your method take all of those moving parts into account?
Wow, that's a great question. And the way that we do that is we treat each person as an individual, right? I believe there's no one size fits all for, here's a protocol for endometriosis. Here's a protocol for diabetes. No, it really is. There's some general guidelines, but there's customization that needs to happen. So the way that we approach that is we do thorough histories with people and get all the information about their background, their family, their genetics. We study genetics, we look at labs, and then we help people to customize their diet, nutrition plan, their lifestyle plan according to where their imbalances lie and where their potential imbalances lie based on family history and genetics. So it's a combination approach. And sure, that just takes into account, men need different types of exercise than women. Women need different exercise during different parts of their cycle. I was just talking to somebody today about that during this part of my cycle, I really can lift heavy and I can build muscle. During this part of my cycle, I have to take it easy. I just can't do that, right?
Yeah.
It's really taking it in. But the thing I want to just really emphasize is when people hear hormones, their first thought goes to estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, right?
Right.
The sex hormones. That's just like a little blip in the tapestry of the hormones in the body. And hormones actually control every function in the body. And so when we look at nutritional endocrinology, is helping people to balance the hormones that affect every function in their body and identify where the imbalances lie.
Okay. Are you able to, put that into context a little bit with maybe a certain case study that you had where, there was a patient or even the practitioner looking at a patient was trying everything and, nothing was working and where it really required a shift in, the hormonal equilibrium? Do you have and what were the steps to get there?
Yeah. So what I see a lot is women and men too, but mostly we hear it from women who just can't seem to shed the weight. They're trying this diet and that diet. They're starving themselves and they're exercising like crazy and the weight just won't come off. Mm-hmm. When we look at those people, oftentimes, and I've had many people, so it's hard to get it down to just one, but I had many people who, when we look at them and we look at lab testing in a way that's different than what conventional medicine looks at. Like conventional medicine, the only test they do related to blood sugar, metabolic health, for example, is fasting glucose. Mm-hmm. And that's like a little blip in the picture, right? And so we look at, for people like this who the struggle is they can't seem to lose weight no matter what they try, it's oftentimes they have too much insulin in their body. Now, like a type 1 diabetic who has too little, but too much, and too much leads to insulin resistance. But before it becomes type 2 diabetes, before it's medically diagnosable, there are warning signs for decades. So we'll find that that person may have an elevated insulin level. And the insulin is what's called a fat storage hormone. It causes the body to store fat on the body. Yeah. So if the insulin is elevated, no matter what they're trying to do, the body's fighting against them because their hormones are out of balance. So when we balance those hormones, and the cool part about it is when you balance insulin, you also can balance the thyroid, the adrenals, the sex hormones. They're all intimately tied together. And then suddenly they get results. I can give you one case. We had one person who had come in and she did a group program with us. And she was 65 years old. She had been diagnosed with what's pan-hypopituitarism, meaning her pituitary was low functioning, which affects everything in the body. She had gone to the doctor and her fasting glucose was creeping up. It wasn't in the diabetic range yet. It was close to that. And so the doctor just said, well, lose weight, blah, 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 come back in 6 months. And if you're in the diabetic range, I'll give you medication. That was unacceptable.
Right.
That's not the answer I want to hear. What do I do now to prevent myself? My mom had it. My uncle had it. I saw the misery of it. They didn't have anything for her. So she came and worked with us and she got the testing done. She got a glucose meter. That's something unique that we started doing, 12, 13 years ago, even before that, but in a group setting, we had people get glucose meters and monitor. Now, everybody and their brother is talking about glucose meters. Right. At the time, people saying, how do you get non-diabetics to test their glucose? And why do you do that? Because it gives you the picture of what's going on, how the glucose levels are affected by food, by stress, by lack of sleep, by the amount of exercise, by lifestyle. And then they gives people the power to make changes based on that. And voila, this woman went on to lose 110 pounds, reversed her Hashimoto's that she'd been diagnosed for 50 years, got off all her other medication because she took care of that hormone imbalance that had been missed all these years. She was just put on thyroid medication. She was just put on blood pressure medication. She was just put on medication to help her pituitary. No, she needed to get to the root cause. And then she was medication free.
So just knowing her, those imbalances, and then tackling it with nutrition, like tackling it with, what would you say? I mean, obviously you don't have to go into her, whole diet, but what would be some key changes that, she was a daily habit, a daily, intake that she had to change?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things, but with each person, you're looking at which are the foods that cause these spikes in glucose. The spikes in glucose usually correspond to the spikes in insulin. So people are having these ups and downs and they just can't seem to shed weight and their hormones are out of balance. So basically it's identifying the foods that raise the sugar, getting off of all the ultra-processed foods, the processed foods, the refined carbohydrates, flour, sugar, big ones, right? Getting on a diet that consisted of a lot of non-sweet, non-starchy vegetables. So like high water content vegetables, lots of greens, and doing daily meditation and daily exercise and getting the right amount of sleep. Those are the kinds of things that make dramatic effects on the hormone balance and get people amazing results.
Okay, so pretty, straightforward. I mean, it's often straightforward, but it's so hard to do in practice.
Right.
Yeah. But what you're saying is, just the sort of things that a lot of people do say, with a healthy, balanced diet,
I don't believe in a healthy, balanced diet.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a healthy, balanced diet because what's healthy for you as a balanced diet may not be for me. So for some of the people that have these imbalances, they have to go off of all fruit even for a while to get the insulin receptors reset. Other people can handle it. And because we're doing that testing, we're looking to see what is it for you that you need to let go of. So you can say to somebody, eat a healthy, balanced diet. But if you look at what a dietitian means by a healthy, balanced diet, is totally not, in my opinion, a healthy diet.
Right.
There's too much starch, there's too much sugar, there's too much crackers and cookies and all that kind of stuff and artificial sweeteners and all that. That's not really a healthy, balanced diet. So I think that saying that to somebody, just go on a healthy, balanced diet, is just frustrating.
It's a bit arbitrary. Yeah, for sure. So basically in like the key part is the testing, like what foods are triggering that, because for some people a food won't trigger those insulin levels like another person, and then reduce that or eat something else to reduce that sugar spike.
Absolutely. And there's some basic guidelines, right? Everybody needs to have enough water intake. everybody needs to get enough sleep. But what you may need for sleep is maybe different from what I need for sleep. So it's monitoring that. But from the food perspective, everybody should be off the processed food. So everybody should be off the garbage that is in the supermarkets that's labeled food that really isn't food. Everybody gets off of that. But some people need to get off of some of the healthier foods, at least temporarily, while they're rebalancing their body.
Okay.
And that makes a huge difference.
Okay. And you mentioned that, some people have warning signs of the elevated insulin. What are the warning signs?
Yeah, there's quite a number of them. So you eat a meal, you have a big full meal, and you still want more. You're still like craving something sweet at the end of that meal. Or you eat a big meal, and then 2 hours later, you're starving for more because your body is not getting all those nutrients into the cells because of the insulin resistance that's going on. You may have a really good night's sleep and still wake up tired. Or you may have the ups and downs, like people who have to be changed to the refrigerator all day long, because if they don't eat every 2 hours, they crash. That's all warning signs. And then getting some extra weight around the middle. Not necessarily the whole body, but just like that abdominal, that muffin top as it's called.
Right.
That's a warning sign as well.
Okay. Very interesting. And what about things like fasting, program fasting to balance hormones? Where do you stand on that?
I think that it works phenomenally for many people and not necessarily for everybody. So you have to really take it as a grain, take it as an individual. Works beautifully for me. I regained my health by doing an extended fast and getting off all the things that were bothering me, and then gradually moving things back in and figuring out what worked for me. I like the concept of intermittent fasting, they call it. I've been teaching that to people for a long time before it became popular, that, you just at least have a 12-hour gap between dinner and bedtime. But, extending that to 14 or 16 hours can be beneficial for a lot of people, not necessarily for everybody. So you just feel it out and see what that ideal window might be. And extended fasting, I would say, under the care of somebody who knows what they're doing, can be super helpful. I had one guy came to me who had diabetes, was on multiple medications, high blood pressure, was overweight, and he was just on all these medications. And he had heard me speak. His wife was a friend of mine, and said, I want to do a fast like you did. So we guided him through a fast, an extended fast, got his doctor on board, taught him how to lower his medications because it was going to be needed. By the end of that fast, he was off all his medications and lost 50 pounds.
Wow.
And felt great, right? And the doctor's like, oh my God, I've never heard of anything like that before.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, for me personally, I've found, the benefits of fasting. I don't know if you're familiar with a woman called Dr. Mindy Peltz, but she just came across my YouTube feed just randomly. And then I started listening to her. And then I was like, this woman is saying so much that I need to hear, especially about the hormones and the cycle and when to fast, when not to fast, what to eat at certain times. And, I started to adopt some things that were very simple and sustainable for me. Obviously life gets in the way. So, sometimes every day is not, the best day, but one of the things was, building myself up to a long fast, a 36-hour fast at the beginning of my cycle, just as a detox measure. And it's amazing how much, it's like I'm reborn after that. It's like this detox. Obviously there's one point where you have to push through, but once you push through, you just feel like you get a second life. And then the next morning you're refreshed and you can break your fast and have so much energy. So that's been great just in terms of energy levels. And then I would say smaller, varying the fasts, not doing any big ones throughout the month, and then not fasting at the end of my cycle, the week before, but eating really, good carbohydrates and nourishing the body with what progesterone needs. And it's been amazing. It's been a year, and the pain that I have during my period, if I do it right, if I do those two things correctly, I have no pain.
That's good.
And just no clotting. I mean, this might be too much information, but it's just,
yeah.
And
it's just phenomenal. It's remarkable, the power of fasting. And when we think about it, it makes sense. We live in a world where food is available 24/7. You get hungry in the night. Most people, unless they live in the middle of nowhere, can just, either get from their refrigerator or go down to 7-Eleven and grab food. And people are eating constantly. And the body's not designed to do that. The body's designed for periods of eating, periods of fasting. Healing happens during fasting. Healing doesn't happen during happens during fasting. And so we eat, we nourish, we get good food in there, and then we take a break and we allow the body to process. We allow the digestive system to rest. We allow the hormones to go back into balance. Then we eat again. And finding the right windows for you is perfect. And she has great information about working with women's cycles.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I'm 39 years old now, and I'm just like, I've had my period for 29 years and it took me this long to figure this out. And I could have been, saving myself from a lot of drama each month. So that's been like a godsend. But something that, when I talk about my experience with people, they sort of, I wouldn't just say to my friend, who just knows nothing about this area, like, oh, you should do a 36-hour fast. Like, you have to educate yourself. You have to understand how your body works and prepare yourself for that. But I do get some looks, just like, you don't eat for a whole day, but like, that's crazy. And that's so weird. And you're a freak and all this stuff. But what would you say to the people who are like really questioning it because it's so far from what they know? Like, sometimes I bring up the Nobel Prize from 2016, it is proper science, and there are studies around.
There's tons of science. Yeah. There's tons of science behind it. So that's how I talk to people. This is in the literature. It's in the medical literature. It's also in religious literature. A lot of prophets and saints and all that did long fasts as a spiritual quest, but there's been a lot of study on it. And they look at the biochemistry of it. Like I said, not everybody should fast. You're not going to tell somebody who's type 1 diabetic to just fast for 5 days. And it just doesn't work that way. So I look at it as an educational process. Oh, so, what do you think is so weird about it? And how does it feel to be eating all the time? Is that working for you? Are you willing to try something slightly different? There's science back it. Here's something to read. So I generally will send them. I have a PDF document on my website that's available. I can give you a link and you can share it with your audience, but it's The Many Faces of Fasting, I think. And it just goes into all the different ways and very scientific, has lots of references in it about how fasting can help the body, right?
Yeah.
I don't recommend long fasts without supervision. And when I say long fasts, I mean anything more than 3 days, 5 days, you might be able to do, because that's easy for me now that I have been doing it. But I'm talking like a 10-day, a 12-day, a 28-day. I once did a 28-day water fast.
Wow.
I've done multiple 10 and 12-day fasts. I've done countless 5-day fasts, like, dozens, maybe even hundreds of those throughout the years.
Yeah.
And it's just, it feels great. There was that struggle during the first few, but even after the first few, you're like, I know it's on the other end, so I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
And then you just feel like, oh, I'm reborn. Like you said, I feel like I'm reborn.
Right. Yeah. Now the 36-hour one is getting quite easy for me to do. But I can definitely see that as a woman, if I tried to do that in the last week, I would struggle. Because I always want to eat. Yeah. Yeah. So it's so powerful to understand what your hormones are doing and then how you can navigate eating and not eating and things like that.
Right. And varying it too, right? It's like you don't want to be doing the same fast every single day. You want to vary. And, have a feast day once a week, once every 2 weeks, right? Where you are not binging on Oreos. I'm not talking about that, but I'm saying having a little bit more on the carbohydrate type foods, more of the, what Mindy calls the nature's carbs,
nature's carbs
and fruit and things like that, according to you. And I really think it's important to keep track and have a meter or a continuous glucose meter. When I first started wearing continuous glucose meter, I don't know, when they first came out to the public more 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't remember, but people would look at me like, oh, I didn't know you were diabetic. Like, I'm not diabetic. I'm trying to prevent myself I have family members who are. I've got to keep myself on track, and it helps me to stay connected with what I should and shouldn't eat. Right. And now people are all over, well, what kind of brand do you use?
Right.
Everybody knows what a CGM is. When I first started talking about them, nobody even knew what they were.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a glucose monitor, but not one that I attach. I just do the prick, especially when I fast, just to make sure everything is okay and I'm not dipping too low. Yeah,
it's important. And a lot of people don't want to do that. So when the CGMs came out, they're like, give me the CGM. I don't want to prick my finger, which is fine. Like the process we originally taught was to try to mimic what you'd get from a CGM. So I had people test every 15 minutes after they ate to see what happened, how high did it go, and how low did it go. You don't have to do that with a CGM.
Yeah. That's really fun. And actually, I also follow this one guy on Instagram. You may have seen him because he has a lot of followers now, but all of his posts are just like, let's see what this food does to my blood glucose. And it just goes, and it's like, it's so addictive to just keep watching. It's such a simple feed. It's like very systematic, but it obviously works. And obviously, he's very clear about, this is for me, this is not good for me. And it's exactly what you say, like you've got to understand what foods are not working for you with the insulin spikes. Yeah. You mentioned the tech of the glucose monitor. We are in a tech revolution. Are there any other tech tools that you use yourself or in your practice and that you recommend to listeners to understand more about what's going on inside our bodies?
Yeah, great question. I really like my Oura Ring.
Everyone has that. That's the number one thing that
I first got that. Nobody had them. And they were like, what's that ring? Yeah, because what it does for me, how accurate the data is, I have no idea. But I know that it gives me information and it keeps me on track with sleep. That used to be my biggest hang up, is going to bed. Oh, I don't need sleep. I eat well. I exercise. Why do I need sleep? And then now when I watch that and I watch my numbers, like I had this period recently that I had to stay up late because I was preparing for an event and I didn't get done. So I was staying up late, which was past midnight. In the olden days, early was 2:00, so it was still relatively, but I watched my what they call your readiness score and your resilience score, and I watched them go down. I got through that, started sleeping again, and I'm watching them steadily. And it's such a good feeling to know, oh, I have more resilience. Oh, my body is it's adapting and it likes this. And then my blood sugar is going to be good after I sleep well. Because if you don't have a good night's sleep, your blood sugar is going to be icky all over the map. So that's one I love. Another one is a Muse headband. And for years, decades even, I've known that meditation is a good thing, mindfulness practices. But I'm such a, active go person that it was hard for me to slow down. So I found this at a workshop like 7 years ago. I don't know how long ago. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And you put it on and you just wear it while you're meditating, and it measures your brain waves and it gives you biofeedback. It tells you, are you in calm mode? Are you in active mode? If you're in active mode, the wind starts blowing and the waves start crashing. And when you're in calm mode, the birds sing. So you get feedback and you go, oops, there I go again, calm. So I started doing that. And I have been meditating every day for the last, I think it's 6 years or 7 years. Like I have a streak going like that I won't break. So again, I won't change anything. I won't not meditate because I don't want to break my streak. So it's a really fun gadget to help you to stay on track if you need it,
Okay. Super interesting. Any others that you...
A watch. Like sometimes I don't always wear it because I don't like wearing a watch, but when I'm exercising, I can check my blood pressure. I can check my heart rate.
Right.
I can check, how long I'm out there, how many miles I'm covering, how many steps I'm doing. So I've done that.
There's nothing that might be able to give us some clues into our hormone imbalances or anything like that.
Coming soon.
Okay.
I think what I hear from the manufacturers of the CGMs is that there will be more things that you can monitor that way.
Okay.
Ketones to start, which is a good thing to do, especially if you are fasting. But I mean, there are some that can measure some other parameters. I do non-techie things like dipsticks, right? With you stick it in your urine and you can see what's your pH and how's your nitric oxide. Those are little saliva sticks. So there's a number of things that I teach people to use to track, because when you measure things and monitor it, you tend to change. You tend to do the right thing because you don't want to get a bad mark or a bad score.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the ones that I basically use at this point.
Okay, great. I just wanted to go back to the fasting conversation a little bit in terms of the nutrition part. Like, can you decipher, the important difference between fasting and starvation? Because I think that this is something that I have seen with some people who think that they're fasting, but they're really just starving themselves and going into massive calorie deficits every day and are wondering why their metabolism slows down, and then they just put the weight back on, the next day.
Right. Yeah. Because their body is going, you just starved me. Where's food? Let me have it. Let me hoard it. In the meantime, while you're going through that phase, you're dropping your metabolic rate. So fasting will drop the metabolic rate it's usually after 2 or 3 days, you'll start to see a drop. So if you're just interspersing a 36-hour fast here, a 48-hour fast there, a 24-hour fast there, it's generally not, as long as you keep active. And as long as in the periods when you're eating, you're actually eating nourishing foods and plenty of it. You're not starving yourself. You're not going into calorie deficit.
Right.
During your eating periods, that you're eating lots of high density, high nutrient density, getting plenty of protein. So starving is just, if you're anorexic, a lot of people, they confuse. You don't want to ask somebody who has a history of anorexia or bulimia to fast. It can trigger all the emotional things that are going to get them into starvation mode. Anorexics starve themselves. Their heart doesn't get the nutrition it needs. Their muscles don't. You can see them wasting away. I fast quite frequently. I don't look like I'm wasting away. I have musculature. I have tone. I am not wasting away. I have good nutrition, right? Yeah. But starving is very different. It's just being afraid of food, not eating because you want to just lose weight. I fast, and I teach people to fast to keep their metabolic health balanced, to keep their hormones balanced, not to get them out of balance. And over fasting can throw your hormones off. And again, looking at the way Dr. Mindy talks about it with the cycles, right? If you eat out of sync with your cycles, or you fast out of sync with your cycles, you're going to throw those hormones off, and you're disrupting your hormone balance.
Okay. And, we did talk a little bit about sleep, but what are, the other behaviors that are just as important in the nutrition conversation? Sleep, exercise, even work and socialization. Where do all of those things become super crucial when it comes to the overall hormonal equilibrium? And how do they also rank against the diet, like the actual physical food?
That's a good question. And it kind of depends on the person. But if you're not sleeping, you cannot heal. You cannot regenerate all the waste products and all the toxins that get produced during your day. You don't get to regenerate that. If you live in any city in the US, right? Unless you're living on the top of a mountain, you're exposed to toxins. Overnight, your body gets the ability, when it sleeps, to cleanse and detoxify. If you've exercised, we want growth hormone surges during sleep, because growth hormone helps us to store the lean and burn the fat. And if we're not sleeping, we're not getting that. So sleep is critical, right? Sleep is top thing. You can be eating beautifully, but if you're not sleeping, your body is destroying itself. So that's critical. Mindfulness. Stress is one of the leading killer situations in this country, in this world, basically. Cortisol is a hormone that gets produced when we're under stress. Cortisol messes with your blood sugar. Cortisol messes with the thyroid. Cortisol messes with digestion. Cortisol messes with estrogen and progesterone. So we want to keep cortisol balanced. There's this thing called the cortisol steal phenomenon. When we're under a lot of stress, all of the hormones in the steroid hormone pathways, which would be cortisol, aldosterone, which controls fluid balance and kidney function, estrogen, progesterone, pregnenolone, and all the sex hormones, they all come through a similar pathway. If you're under a ton of stress and your body needs to run away from tigers, it prioritizes the stress over reproduction. So what happens is that cortisol steals away all of the other precursors, and we don't make enough estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. We're seeing just an enormous surge in infertility and in even men in their 30s with low sex drive. We kind of expect that happens later on, although it doesn't have to. But when a 35-year-old man says he has no sex drive, it's the stress, right? So stress is critical for hormone balance, getting that under control. So even short mindfulness breaks throughout the day. If you don't want to meditate for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, every day, you take these breathing breaks throughout the day. There's a system I love to teach people called HeartMath, which uses breath and appreciation throughout the day to balance out and get you into the parasympathetic nervous system versus the sympathetic fight-flight. Critical. Those are critical things. So I would say sleep and stress are the most important things. And then exercise is important. But some people over-exercise, believe it or not, right? So it's
I've experienced that.
Balance. You experience that.
Yeah.
And then you're drained and you just can't move because you did too much for your body's capacity at the time. So movement's critical for keeping the insulin levels balanced, because those muscles that are well trained, they pick up the insulin better. So you don't have the surges in blood sugar. All of that.
Yeah, I think with the exercise part, what I've realized for my body, especially as I get older, I do feel in the moment really good doing those like really intense, high intensity classes where you're like, battering your body around. Like it's fun to do it in the moment. But then afterwards, I do notice that my body is just like irritated, like it's inflamed or there's something wrong. Where then I feel like when I stop doing it, then I sort of deflate. I almost don't even look, even though I'm building muscle, I won't look muscly. It will look the other way. So understanding what works for your body. And I was stressing my body at the end of it. Like my body was in complete stress if I do too much, even though it feels good in the moment. My heart rate is racing. I have quite a low resting heart rate, with like what we would say is healthy, but it can spike up if I just do, those kinds of.
Right. So it's finding that balance, finding that sweet spot of where you get the best results. You don't want to give it up, but sometimes those high intensity classes might be too much, and just having some weights, and you start to gradually increase your weights rather than incorporating it with aerobic kind of activity. And eventually, if you build up and you get the good nutrition and the right nutrients, the right amount of protein and omega-3s and vitamins and minerals, then you might build it. But it might be also when you're in a state where chasing after little kids, stressful job, whatever the stressors are in your life, if those are under play, then you can't exercise quite as much, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be training for a marathon and trying to get pregnant at the same time.
Right.
No, it doesn't work that way.
No. Yeah. Way to put it. And just to finish off, we talked a lot about practical tips for the listeners, just everyday people. But for since you're from the Institute, for healthcare practitioners that want to sort of step it up, fine tune their practice, their holistic health practice with some of, embracing some more of these sort of endocrinology principles, what would you say, are the main challenges that you see when people come to you for their courses, where they're struggling with their practice, and what are the best tips that you can give them?
Absolutely. You got to stay on top of it. You got to stay on top of the latest and the greatest. You have to really understand what's going on in here. There are a lot of courses out there for health practitioners that just teach a superficial level. Like, here's a protocol for hot flashes. Here's a protocol for this. And if that's all you know, and somebody comes in, they didn't read the textbook. They generally don't know what they're supposed to present like, and there's some unusual presentations. You have to be able to understand what's going on. So keeping yourself educated, we offer lots continuing education all the time. We offer a healthcare practitioner 3-day event once a year. I'm constantly doing webinars and Facebook and YouTube videos. Educate, and really understand what's going on, because it's critical thinking is very important. You have to be able to think through what this person is presenting with how this body is supposed to work, where it's going wrong. Are there tests I need to run? What are some of the nutrients they're out of balance with? And really putting it all together. So it takes critical thinking and staying on top of the latest information.
Okay.
We have lots of that at our institute.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Ritamarie, for joining the podcast. It's been great having you on. The discussion has been super insightful. I'll definitely check out some of your materials as well on your website. And for those who want to learn more about Ritamarie's Institute of Nutritional Endocrinology, be sure to visit their website, which is inemethod.com,
Yes.
www.inemethod.com.
Yeah.
Don't forget to subscribe to Holistic Health Habits for more episodes featuring experts in the field. Until next time, I'm Sarani Fernando. Take care and stay healthy.